There aren't many impressive 10-inch Android tablets out there these days, but the Asus Memo Pad FHD 10 and the Sony Xperia Tablet Z are some of them. We'll have these two side by side in this comparison, so you'll know exactly what you're getting and what you're missing with them, so stick with me if you're interested in either of these. Long story short, we have a couple of 10-inch Android tablets here, both running Android. So at their core, they are fairly similar devices. The hardware inside the Xperia Tablet Z, a Qualcomm S4 platform, is more powerful than the Intel Atom platform on the Memo Pad, and that translates in better scores in benchmarks for the first, and more importantly, a snappier and smoother everyday experience for the person that actually uses the device. Even so, the two can handle pretty much everything you will throw at them, from the basics like reading books, browsing or watching YouTube clips, to music, movies and games. And yes, the Memo Pad tends to choke a bit more often when heavily pushed, but the Xperia Tablet Z is not completely stutter-free either. On top of that, it's worth mentioning that neither are perfect multimedia companions. The Z, for instance, sports an awesome screen, as you'll find out a bit later, but rather teeny speakers. The Memo Pad on the other hand packs punchier speakers, although they are placed on the back of the tablet, but the overall image quality isn't quite on par with what you're getting with the Sony Slate. That aside, the two tablets benefit from the same pros and lacks Android has to offer on 10-inch tablet these days. And when I mention lacks, I'm mostly talking about subpar third-party app support. The two manufacturers slightly skin and tweak their interfaces in their own way, but at the end of the day, you're getting more or less the same features on these devices, just slightly redesigned. Sony does bundle a couple of apps and links to their own content services on the Z, something the Asus Slate lacks, but the Taiwanese try to compensate with their own selection of apps and services. Okay, so now that we know what these tablets have in common, let's see what sets them apart. We'll start with the most obvious aspect, the looks. The Xperia Tablet Z is one of the slickest, lightest and at the same time most solid slate I've ever seen. Plastic is used for the entire case, but a matte one, so the end product does not look cheap at all and is just different from any other tablets available in stores these days. The Memo Pad is not an ugly device either, but aesthetically is nowhere near its rival. When it comes to practicality though, things change. For instance, the Asus Pad is more comfortable to hold and use thanks to its rounded edges and grippy soft back, and that despite being thicker and heavier. Then, since the Xperia Tablet Z is IP57 certified, or in other words weatherproof, all the ports are sealed by some plastic caps. As a result, actually using and accessing these connectors is a rather unpleasant experience, while that doesn't happen on the Memo Pad. On top of that, the Memo Pad does offer HDMI video output, something not available on the Tablet Z, which however tends to compensate for that with things like NFC, an IR blaster and 4G LTE support. And then there are the screens, crucial for such devices. Both feature 10-inch panels with 1920 by 1200 pixel resolution, so both display sharp and smooth details, pictures and fonts. Asus went for an IPS panel on their device, but it's not the best of its kind, as it is rather dim and a bit washed out. Sony on the other hand went for an LCD panel, with their latest triluminous technology meant to enrich colors and contrast, and the results are good, although a bit skewed and oversaturated. The screen on the Z is also brighter, thus easier to use in strong light. But while the Xperia does bundle the overall superior display here, the one on the Memo Pad is fairly good too, and you won't really feel these differences between the two unless having the slates one next to the other. That aside, on paper, the Z bundles a set of superior cameras to the ones you're getting on the Asus Slate, with a more elaborate camera interface as well. In practice, the pics coming out of the Z are not as sharp as I was expecting, but even so, better than the ones coming from the Memo Pad. As for the videos, the gap is even larger between the two, as you can see from the next part of this clip. Still, I for one never take photos with my tablet, so I don't care much about this. I do however care about something else. How long can I use my slate on each charge? And when it comes to that, the Asus Memo Pad tends to marginally outlast the Xperia Tablet Z. With average use though, you should expect about 5 hours of gaming on the two, around 8 of looping a 1080p clip and perhaps 10 or so when used lightly. And while that's not impressive, it's not really that bad either. At the end of the day, both these devices are fairly good home use slates. With their 10-inch screens, you probably won't take them out too often, but if you decide to do it, you'll find the Xperia Z the better travel companion thanks to its reduced weight and brighter screen. In fact, the Z is the device of choice here. It's more compact than the Memo Pad, better looking, waterproof, snappier and so on. But it sells for $500 and up, and to be frank, it's hard to justify paying that kind of money for an Android tablet these days, no matter how sleek it looks. Add that to the things that can be improved, like the performances, the speakers, the cameras or the battery life, and the Z might not look like the ideal slate for you. The Memo Pad is a much simpler device. It fails to impress in any way, but it's overall just good. In fact, more than good if we're considering its retail price, only $300, so almost half the price of the Xperia Z. Bottom point, if you want the coolest 10-inch Android tablet of the moment, regardless of how much it costs, Sony's Xperia Tablet Z should be at the top of your list. On the other hand, if you are on a tighter budget and want a solid Android slate, the best you can get for your money, then the Asus Memo Pad FHD 10 does not have a worthy rival right now, not even the Nexus 10. Anyway, we'll talk more about that in a future clip. For now, it's time to wrap this up. Thanks for watching and hit the thumbs up button if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe to the channel for future updates, and before you go, let me know what do you think about these two tablets we've compared here and which one of them you'd rather buy. Catch you later.